is 7 News at 10. Off the top, night team coverage of major developments in D.C.
It's dumbfounding. Just when we think this president has gone as far as he could possibly go, we hear this sort of a report.
The president facing new trouble at home after a new report about the firing of James Comey while overseas.
Definitely the visit has a great symbolic value for both countries.
International issues front and center as the commander-in-chief travels abroad.
Good evening, and tonight, ousted FBI Director James Comey says he is ready to talk.
This news coming as the president begins his overseas trip and turmoil is back home. We have live night team coverage. Sheldon Fox has details on that trip. We're also live in Washington, where Lauren Blanchard has more on the FBI fallout. We begin with Joe Roats live in the Plex with the latest on the investigation and the president's possible ties to Russia. Joe.
A Senate committee has been wanting to talk to James Comey since the president abruptly fired him last week. They want to know more about a memo he wrote detailing the president's request to drop an investigation into the president's former national security advisor. Now he's ready to talk.
Will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Ready to be sworn in again on Capitol Hill. Fired FBI Director James Comey set to publicly testify in front of a Senate Intelligence Committee, part of a fast-growing probe into what ties, if any, President Donald Trump's 2016 campaign has to Russia. But the trouble doesn't stop there.
That White House lawyers have begun researching impeachment procedures.
Talk of the ultimate action against Mr. Trump dominating news coverage Friday night, a notion even Democrats have reportedly been trying to downplay.
The possibility of impeachment now exists for Donald Trump. It's unlikely, but lawyers are paid to worry. And it's appropriate for them to do some preliminary research.
These aren't the only bombshells to hit D.C. The New York Times looking at the president's sudden firing of FBI Director Comey last week. An article focusing on discussions the president had with two top-ranking Russian diplomats the day after, in which the president openly discusses the decision. The Times reports the president told the Russians, quote, "I just fired the head of the FBI. He was crazy. A real nut job." And, quote, "I faced great pressure because of Russia. That's taken off." Times reporter Maggie Haberman speaking to CNN's Anderson Cooper.
His speaking style has continued to get him into trouble. You can take the view that this was done intentionally as a way to please the Russians, to say, look what I did. The counter argument is that the pressure on him was by Democrats.
Press Secretary Sean Spicer not denying the claims, issuing a statement that reads in part, quote, "By grandstanding and politicizing the investigation into Russia's actions, James Comey created unnecessary pressure on our ability to engage and negotiate with Russia." Piling on to that, The Washington Post, publishing its own article on the Russian probe, reporting the law enforcement investigation into possible coordination between Russia and the Trump campaign has identified a current White House official as a significant person of interest. This comes as Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein briefed House members on Capitol Hill following his decision to appoint special counsel to investigate any potential ties from the Trump campaign to the Kremlin.
He would not discuss anything at all beyond just bare facts of where the investigation is going. He basically said it's all up to Mueller as to what can be discussed.
CNN also reporting that government officials intercepted alarming Russian communications that the relationship between the Kremlin and the president's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, could be used to influence the president. Of course, Mr. Trump fired Flynn back in February. In the Plex, Joe Roats, 7 News Night Team.
All right, Joe, and correspondent Lauren Blanchard joins us once again from Washington tonight. Lauren, thanks for giving us a couple of minutes. The reaction among the team at the White House that the former director has now said he will go ahead and testify, the mood over there as a result of that.
Hey, Craig and Lynn. Well, so far the White House has not said anything on Comey saying that he'll testify. Remember, everybody's still in the air on their way to Saudi Arabia for the president's first foreign trip. So we're waiting to hear exactly what the White House thinks of this. Now, we have heard from two other committees who did want former FBI Director James Comey to testify. One was the House Oversight Committee. They were offering to have Comey come in. He has not responded to their invitation. And notably, the second one, the Senate Judiciary Committee, has said that Comey has declined their invitation. They are saying they're very disappointed in Comey's decision to not appear, just because that committee does deal with making sure and vetting the next FBI director. So they're hoping he'll reconsider this after we have found out Comey will testify for the Senate Intelligence Committee sometime after Memorial Day.
Lauren, what's the reaction in the Senate there on Capitol Hill after this report, and what are the Republicans saying about the president and the people in his circle as well?
Yeah, so the Washington Post report where somebody within the president's senior advisors is part of this investigation. Now, the White House has not directly denied the report, rather saying they believe still a thorough investigation is going to show there was absolutely no sort of collusion between the president and Russia back in the 2016 campaign. So they are not denying the report, but also saying they have nothing to worry about.
Lauren Blanchard, once again in Washington, thank you for that live update tonight.
Night Team coverage continues now with Sheldon Fox live in the Satellite Center with more on the president's trip overseas. Sheldon?
Lynn and Craig, we've seen him jet set as a civilian and as a candidate and make multiple visits nationwide during his young presidency. But right now, President Trump is going global.
My fellow Americans, this weekend I begin my first trip overseas as president.
It's the transcontinental trip being watched by the world.
I will be visiting with the leaders in many different countries to strengthen our old friendships, build new partnerships, and unite the civilized world in a fight against terrorism.
The 9-day international journey visiting 4 countries with 5 total stops.
My first stop will be Saudi Arabia, the heart of the Muslim world.
The billboards there boast of Mr. Trump's upcoming arrival above highways in the country considered the birthplace of Islam, a religion for which the president reserved some of his harshest words as a candidate.
I think Islam hates us.
But Mr. Trump has said the opposite about Israel, which is where he'll travel to next, and where American flags were being made in preparation for his visit. He'll be in Jerusalem
to talk with my good friend, Prime Minister Netanyahu. I'll also meet with President Abbas of the Palestinian Authority in Bethlehem to discuss ways to advance peace between Israel and the Palestinians.
Then the president heads here,
Benedicat vos omnipotens Deus,
to the Vatican, where he'll meet with Pope Francis. Then to Brussels, Belgium for a NATO meeting, and then Sicily for a meeting with the other leaders of the G7, a gathering of Western economic powers. The President and First Lady arrive in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia at 9:50 Saturday morning. That's 2:50 a.m. our time. And we're live in the Plex. Sheldon Fox, 7 News Night Team.
Stay with 7 News as our coverage of President Trump's historic trip continues. Tune in to Today in Florida Saturday starting at 7 a.m. And when you're on the go, get the latest information out of Washington through our 7 News President's Agenda app.